The underworld is where you have to go to reclaim yourself. And it's very scary. It's not an easy place to traverse because the one who has to traverse it is one who is fragmented. So people often talk about going into the underworld to reclaim so-called lost fragments of oneself. But it's not that so much as it is the one who has to make the journey through the underworld is already in fragments. And so it's fear that is going down into a place of fear, apparently. So the underworld is a hall of mirrors that's showing you the distortion that you are. And that distortion, what you discover, isn't personal. It is the distortion of the entirety of time, space, and thought. It's the distortion of the whole culture. It's the distortion of the whole world. It doesn't matter what so-called culture or tradition or language background you come from. The mind is the mind, thought is thought, memory is memory, and the physics thereof is identical throughout the entire universe because there's only one physics. And the physics of the mind is the physics of the mind. And when you are identified with an individual sense of self, you're in division. When you're in division, there's the split between the so-called conscious and the unconscious. But that conscious, which is the divided other half of the unconscious, is still unconscious. It's not actually conscious, because true consciousness is whole and without division. So when there's a division between the so-called conscious mind and the so-called unconscious mind, that whole thing is unconsciousness. And the underworld is that symbolic place where you go to, and it may be experienced as real. You can go to any number of mythologized or imaged underworlds in journey, in trance, in some kind of altered state, but what you are bearing witness to is your own mind. You're bearing witness to the mind. And when you go into that place, what you perceive is only that which is the reflection of your own division, of your own self-rejection, of your own self-hatred, of your own shame, guilt, and fear, which is the self-rejection, shame, guilt, and fear of the entire world, of the ego structure. So the so-called individual unconscious is 100% the same and identical to the so-called collective unconscious or the cosmic unconscious. It is the same place. So what you see whenever you're looking out anywhere is only a reflection of the fragmentation of your own mind. When the mind is no longer fragmented, which means the mind has disappeared, because the mind that is whole and complete without division is no mind at all. There's no object there to be able to discern between this piece and that piece. There are no longer any pieces. So in this awareness, there is no longer a conscious or unconscious mind. So that's the gift of going through the underworld, the labyrinth of the unconscious mind, is that when you come out the other side, you see there is no unconscious mind, there is no conscious mind, there is no mind. The mind is a concept projected as an image of thought, which is memory in comparison. And when there's identification with memory, then there's the split of me and you, us and them, heaven and hell, this and that. When you see through that actually, not conceptually, it's not good enough to have a conceptual notion or belief in the reality or the unreality of the mind. That's irrelevant. If you believe the mind is real, you're insane. If you believe the mind is not real, you're insane. If you believe or disbelieve anything, you're insane. You're in ignorance. You're in unconsciousness or the ego, which is false self-awareness. When you're actually here in the living reality of being, there's no division, there's no split. And yet you retain the ability, apparently, and there's no you that retains the ability because there is no you. There's simply the speaking of, here is bottle, and here is other bottle. And we can set them nicely together, or we can smash them together, or we can put them down. But all of that motion, that movement that just took place is totally inseparable from all that is. It has nothing to do with anything. There's nobody here picking them up, and there's nobody smashing them. But you, as the person watching, will look at this form and make an image out of it and say, no, there is you, because here's me. And you just picked up these bottles and made them do a dance, and you called them bottles, and you said that's the desk, and now you just put those two bottles, which you just named, back onto the desk, which you just named, calling yourself you and calling me me, right? And you can take all that seriously. But all of that is the play of mind. They're words. Words are sounds. The sounds are not separate from the brain and the mouth producing them, which are not separate from the environment in which the sound is being produced, not separate from the earth, which creates the environment, which is not separate from the space in which the earth is formed, not separate from the consciousness in which all of this is, which is certainly not separate from you, the brain receiving all of this. It's all one movement. It all goes together. So the very speech coming out of this mouth is exactly what it is because everything else is exactly the way it is. If the planets and the stars and the animals running through the wilderness and the savannah were oriented even slightly differently, so would the very speech coming out of this mouth be. So what you discover when you perceive everything directly is that everything is what it is because everything else is the way that it is because there is no else, there is no other. There is only one form, one consciousness, one being, one openness, one vastness, and that is called God. And in this awareness, you see there is neither unconscious nor conscious. There certainly is no fixed reality to anything called the subconscious. The subconscious is just the factory. That's the machinery that is habitually set up processing forms of thought. It's the mechanical, repetitive post of output. And so what people call the subconscious, which is really subconscious machinery, in the Nordic tradition that's called the dwarves, the functionality and the structure of that is either in the full light of conscious awareness, in which the thing is then seen for what it is and it then dissolves, or it's in the unconscious, which means you don't see it. And so for most people, the subconscious is usually 10% above ground and then 90% below ground, or you can adjust the ratio ever so slightly. But when people talk about, my conscious and my unconscious self, what they're really talking about is how much of their subconscious they perceive and how much they don't perceive. Because whatever is in the conscious mind is just a distortion. Whatever is in the unconscious mind is a distortion. Until there is only one mind in your direct awareness without any division between the conscious and the unconscious, and certainly not pretending that the subconscious is some other strange layer, it's not. All the information in your so-called conscious mind is all a product of the subconscious mind, which is just the memory bank stored, and the memory is a machine. Memory is a machine, which is conditioning, and that's all filtered through the limited recording that has been taken into the brain, which is all charged with the basic sensation of division, separation, which is no love. So this is why when you're sitting here in actual meditation, which is actual unconditional awareness of the love that you are and your seamless inseparability with God and all that is, there's no memory, there's no time, there's no thought, there's no individual separate sense of self, there's just being. And in this awareness, there's no so-called ego. The ego is revealed to be a non-existent entity which is put together by thought, by memory. Even the notion of something called an ego is a projection of memory. And so there is no ego, there is no thought, there is no mind, there is neither a conscious mind nor an unconscious mind, and what you call the subconscious mind is just the mechanical output of the brain taking memory, turning it into a logical machine. Logic just means grammatically connected. That means the machine actually functions. Whether it outputs shit or gold, that's something else. But it can't even output gold. It can output tools that actually work in a way that is conducive to life, or it can output a bunch of gnarled things that don't do anything but destroy. But even if you have machinery that outputs very finely crafted tools, if those tools are not held in the hands of actual love, of actual consciousness, of cosmic consciousness, or God consciousness, or true universal consciousness, then those tools will simply be used toward the ends of self-destruction and the destruction of life. So the attempt that a lot of people do spiritually to try to reprogram their subconscious mind is fucking stupid. All you can do is come here into absolute cosmic consciousness, and then you allow that to run the show, consciously. But what you discover is that that was always running the show. You just had to realize that. And when you don't realize that, you still believe that you are some separate entity out here pulling the levers. You're not. There's only one will, one force, one consciousness, one power, one being doing and moving everything, and that is called you can call it God, you can call it the true self, you can call it great spirit, great mystery, you can call it the universe, you can call it whatever you want to call it. It has no name, and all names belong to it. All names belong to it, all form belongs to it. It is itself beyond name and form, containing all name and all form. And so all form and all formlessness are one. And when you're in direct awareness of this, you are retired. You just get to bask in this and go, that's fucking great. Because there's no you to do anything or to not do anything. There's just all of this that's taking place. And if you try to make a philosophy out of that, which people do, you're going to get lost again. There's no philosophy to derive from this. There's no psychological habits or performative goal posts to try to achieve in the hearing of any of this. You can't take meditation and try to make it a goal or a habit. That's not meditation. That's just you giving yourself a lobotomy from the inside out. That's what most people are doing when they're trying to practice so-called manifestation. They're giving themselves a lobotomy from the inside out. You have to actually be willing to die. You have to surrender to the immediacy of death, which is all around you. And in this absolute surrender to that, you realize what God is. You come into the truth of being, and you see it's God alone that moves everything. All movement is divine. All movement is sacred. Everything is sacred. Everything is holy. And in this realization, you see what all of the movement of the mind is. You see what all war is. You see what all hatred is. You see what all violence is. You see what all suffering is. You see what all division is. You see what it is to be divided and at war inside of yourself and in the world. And you see that it's the exact same thing. And it's the result of ignorance of self, which is a hiccup called thought that you believe to be real and you identify with. And so you think you have thoughts and other people have thoughts, and some thoughts are good and some thoughts are bad, and some thoughts are yours, but other thoughts are intrusive. There's no such thing. All thought is intrusive, and none of it's yours. Thought is not personal. It's not personal. It's a mechanical structure. Memory is not personal. It's a mechanical structure. It's physics. And when you see that all of time, space, and thought is one movement of physics, and that physics is the very manifestation of consciousness itself, there's no division between anything and anything else, then it's fine. And in this awareness, there's just awareness basking in its own glory. There's just consciousness basking in its own celebration of itself, which is the very living essence of intelligence, peace, love, joy, unconditional and unconditionally. And it's this lack of awareness that is separation from the divine in experience. This very lack of awareness of inseparable union with all that is eternally is the very essence of all of our so-called destructive systems of so-called civilization, which we have all kinds of names for, socially, psychologically, sociologically, etc. And all of those names, they serve some kind of functional purpose in the interstitial time, so-called, between the experience of the divided self and one's awakening, one's awareness of self. But those terms all fall flat, and they fail to actually convey the deep understanding that they are attempting to be able to convey. They can't do it. So all of these social terms that we use today to describe disconnect from self, disconnect from nature, disconnect from consciousness, disconnect from awareness, disconnect from life, they're all intermediary provisional terms which then get taken to stand in for some kind of like absolute de facto understanding of who caused it and why they're causing it, but the reality is there's nobody causing it. There's nobody causing anything. Truth is causeless, God is causeless, reality is causeless, freedom is causeless, love is causeless. There's no cause to any of it. There's no agent or actor behind any of it. This is an actorless act. It's a directorless direction. There's no director, there's no actor, there's no performer, there's no player, there's just play. And when this is seen, there's a great release. And you see that there is no division between the upper world and the underworld. There's no division between heaven and hell. There's no division between masculine and feminine. There's no division between heaven and earth, or God and the devil, or the left and the right. There's no division between in and out. There's no division between anything and anything else. All division is contrived. And because you believe in the reality of that contrived conditioning under the threat of punishment, which is how it's coerced, because unless you're threatened with punishment in some way or the other, you have no reason to keep buying into the belief that things are intrinsically separate. It's only the threat of punishment that keeps you in that state of division. And so when you're no longer afraid of the threat of that kind of punishment because you see it can't touch your eternal immortal self anyway, no matter what anybody says or does, you can release all of that. And when you sit here in the perfectly released state, you are with God. You are one with God. You're the self-same thing, and so is everything and everybody, because there is no thing and there is no body. Only nothing and nobody is. And the nobody and nothing that is all there is in fact everything and everybody, all at once. Everything and everybody is nothing and nobody, all at once. And nothing and nobody is everything and everybody. And that is called being itself. That is consciousness. And this has been a successful journey through the underworld and out the other side. Well, before we go, that's how it works. That's how it functions. It's very simple. People want to turn this into some whole lifelong journey of shadow work, and that's all a bunch of fucking bullshit. You can go through the whole damn thing right now. It takes a second. It takes no time. It takes no time. It takes no time. But that threatens people's sense of superiority. Because people want to wear their little badges, and they want to say, I'm a real shaman and you're not, or I'm a real witch, or I'm a real yogi, or I'm a real Christian, or I'm a real person of knowledge, and so you better listen to me, because in my advanced years, I've done this my whole life, and I still haven't got it, so therefore, who are you to get it? I'm eternal being. Sorry that you want to have power over other people, but this isn't about power. When you're here in awareness of your eternal being, you don't want power over anybody else. You see, you can't have it anyway. Nobody who's actually here in their true self wants to use their little spiritual titles to have a sense of power over anybody else. Because what you want is for everybody to be free. Because until we're all free, we're stuck in this gnarled cage. So you want everyone to be free. You want everyone to be here and whole and healthy and happy and living in this great joy because it's free. Self-acceptance is free. Love is free. Peace is free. Wisdom is free. Freedom is free. When they tell you that freedom isn't free, yes, it is. Yes, it is. It costs your whole being, but your being was given to you for free. And there's no you to whom the being was given. It's your own self. There's literally nothing to lose here. Nothing. There's only the appearance of something to lose when you're caught in the falseness of division, which is only maintained through coercion, force, violence, and punishment, which is all based on a lie, based on ignorance. So when you see that no matter which way you slice the cake, that your sense of a divided separate self is based on ignorance from every direction, you either continue with that ignorance, which means you continue in the unnecessary suffering, or else you step back, you stop, and you are completely released from it. And so there are no young souls or old souls. There are young bodies and old bodies, but the soul is one with God, and that's eternal being. I am eternity. I am eternal being itself. The body's irrelevant. No matter how old or young the body is, all being is eternal, and being is all there is. That's all. Peace.